This video is about recovery processes, or about the recovery process of the body. So there are three main reasons that the body has to recover from exercise. It has to restore the body systems to their resting state, so the CV system, the cardiovascular, the respiratory system, and the body's energy systems, neuromuscular system. It has to resynthesize energy sources, and it has to repair damage that's been caused by the exercise that you've just participated in. EPOC. Now, EPOC stands for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption above resting levels. Now, in steady state, on this graph, the grey shaded area labelled oxygen deficit is the deficit of oxygen that the body has. This is where the body will be working anaerobically, because it needs oxygen and it's not getting enough, so we're working anaerobically to produce energy for the exercise. Now, EPOC is the recovery period where the body needs oxygen to replenish energy sources, restore body systems and repair damage caused by exercise. In maximal exercise, EPOC and O2 deficit are both much larger than they are in steady state, and this is because the body is working anaerobically for longer, which means that the O2 deficit will be greater to start with, and it will then mean that EPOC, or excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, will be a lot bigger as well, because more O2 is needed for the body to repay its debt of oxygen. So, for example, in a marathon, the body will be working anaerobically for a very short time, so the O2 deficit is very small, and this means that when the marathon is finished, EPOC will also be very small, so recovery of the energy systems and energy sources won't take a very long time. However, the recovery, the time it takes, it will take a very long time for the body to repair the damage done to the muscles, because marathon is very strenuous on all of your muscles. Whereas in a 100-meter sprint, the body is working anaerobically the whole time, and it's very maximal and intense exercise. So the body will have a very large O2 deficit. So the recovery of energy systems and energy sources will take much longer than it would after a marathon, but the 100 meters will only put a little bit of strain on the muscles, so it will take a lot less time to repair the damage done to them than it would after a marathon was run. So the fast components of recovery are the alactic components. So on this diagram we have this graph. The alactic phase of recovery is labelled A. So this is alactic debt and EPOC. This is EPOC as well, because it's the excess post-oxygen consumption above resting levels. So the aerobic system is used to replenish the ATP-PC system, and oxygen is used by the aerobic system to make energy for ATP and PC resynthesis, and to resaturate blood carriers, and it's a very quick process to happen. The aerobic system resaturates both hemoglobin and myoglobin, hemoglobin being the O2 carrier in the blood and myoglobin being the oxygen carrier in the muscles. So the aerobic system resaturates them both with oxygen. It takes 0.5 litres of oxygen for complete resaturation of both hemoglobin and myoglobin. Then resynthesis of ATP and PC stores. This takes about 3 to 4 litres of oxygen for complete resynthesis to happen. It takes about 30 seconds for 50% of resynthesis to happen. Then it will take a minute for 75% of resynthesis to happen. So the more that gets resynthesized, the slower the rate, the slower and the less the rate of resynthesis becomes. So as I just said, it's very quick to resynthesize to start with, but as the more is resynthesized, the rate at which resynthesis happens decreases. So in a rugby match, this will happen after you have run the pitch and scored a try. So if you've run from your try line to the other try line and scored, averagely you'll have about a minute to recover from that exercise. And alactic recovery will then resynthesize some ATP and about 75% of PC, so that the body will be able to work anaerobically again, but it will be able to work anaerobically for less time. So, and this will happen every time there's a break in the game. But every time you resynthesize ATP and PC stores and then work again, the resynthesis will the rate of resynthesis will become less and less. So the further into the game, you have less ATP and less PC resynthesis taking place. So the slow components of recovery. So CO2 removal. CO2 is removed in the blood. There are 3 ways in which it's transported in the blood. 23% is transported as carbaminohemoglobin, which is a hemoglobin molecule attached to a carbon dioxide molecule. 70% is transported as carbonic acid, which is a combination of CO2 and water, or H2O, and 3% of carbon dioxide is dissolved in the blood plasma, and then the last 4% stays in the body, as the body actually requires a little bit to perform bodily functions. The body will increase cardiac output by increasing the body's heart rate, and it will increase ventilation by increasing breathing rate, and this is to try and remove the CO2, because if cardiac output is increased, then the more you'll be able to carry more CO2 to the muscles, because there's more blood pumping around the body. And if VE or ventilation is increased, then it will mean that you're breathing more, so more CO2 can be removed from the blood, so that the CO2 gets out of your body quicker. In recovery, both cardiac output and ventilation will both be lower than they were during the exercise, but they will be higher than the corresponding values than that they have at rest. So after a stage of the Tour de France, there'll be a lot of CO2 in the body, because the muscles have been working a submaximal intensity for between 2 and 4 hours. So Q and VE, or cardiac output and ventilation, will both drop once the stage finishes, but they'll still be relatively high because there is a lot of CO2 to be removed from the body. Lactic acid is removed from the body via the Cori cycle, and we've got a diagram of that here, and it's another slow component of exercise. So lactic acid doesn't actually cause pain and fatigue in the muscles. It's a very useful byproduct of anaerobic glycolysis, and without it, acidosis and muscle fatigue would occur a lot quicker, and an athlete's performance would be severely restricted. In recovery, 65% of lactic acid is reoxidized and returns to the form of pyruvate, which then enters the Krebs cycle and is converted into energy for ATP resynthesis, CO2, and H2O, which are both easily removed from the body by breathing. 5% of lactic acid is converted to glucose using a process called the Cori cycle. 20% of lactic acid is converted to glycogen using the Cori cycle. This happens in the liver, and then it's stored in the muscles and in the liver. And then 10% of lactic acid is converted to protein. The Cori cycle is the process that glucogen can be broken down at the same time as it is being remade from lactic acid. It's broken down in the muscles via anaerobic glycolysis, which is used to make energy for ATP resynthesis. However, at the same time in the liver, the lactic acid which was created by anaerobic glycolysis is reoxidized to become pyruvate, and this is then converted into glycogen through gluconeogenesis. So the other slow component of recovery is glycogen restoration. Muscle glycogen is the body's natural store of glycogen in the muscle sarcoplasm. After about an hour of submaximize, shown on the graph by the green arrow, the rate which the body's glycogen store is used will increase, causing a big drop in the amount of glycogen left in the muscles after 2 hours of exercise. And it can then take up to 2 days for glycogen stores to be completely restored. Short duration, high intensity. The recovery time for glycogen to be completely restored after a short duration, high intensity exercise like a 100-meter sprint would be about 2 hours. However, after a prolonged low intensity aerobic exercise like a marathon, it could take up to 2 days to completely restore the muscle's glycogen stores. It can be delayed by eating a high carb diet before an event. So it will be the big drop represented after the arrow. The green arrow will be delayed and might be after 2 hours rather than after 1 hour. And gels and drinks will help during the exercise. So you can take a glycogen gel, say after an hour and a half, and the rate at which your glycogen stores are decreasing might slow down for a bit. So ultimately, the average rate of decrease in glycogen stores will be less, because of the gels and drinks have prolonged the period in which the muscle glycogen stores drop significantly. So eat 300 to 400 calories of carbs straight after exercise, and eat 300 to 400 calories of carbs within 2 hours of completing the exercise to try and aid the restoration of muscle glycogen stores. Active recovery is needed to restore Q, VE and body temperature to their resting levels. Doing an active cool down will prevent blood pooling, and the skeletal muscle pump and valves in the veins will also help prevent this and
keep blood pumping around